Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we're going to break down a couple different things, including the cap health for the Giants this season and moving forward. You know, some of the moves they made this offseason with Kenny Golladay, Adoree Jackson, big money signings, including Leonard Williams too. Where did this money go? How is their cap health for 2022, 2023, and why I think, they're in good shape. They did a really, really good job this offseason, preparing themselves for the future with these cap hits, with these salary hits, moving forward. So I'm pretty excited to talk about that. And then, what's really, really getting me hyped is we're going to do a one-round mock draft just after Kenny Golladay, after Adoree Jackson, after all this, who we think the Giants are going to go with in the first round. And Anthony and I were just talking about it, and they've really perplexed us with their moves. It's going to be interesting to talk about because I'm excited to see what Anthony's perspective is moving forward. But before we dive into the cap situation, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Another day where I wake up and I feel happy to be a Giants fan, and I feel positive for, hopeful for the future. I feel a lot of an overwhelming sense of hope and positivity looking forward for the New York Giants. I know entering this offseason, we were very concerned. We were like, well, the Giants are running really thin on cap space. What are they going to do? They figured it out. They had a lot of moves that they could make. It wasn't easy. I'm still going to hold true to that. That was not easy for them to get under the cap. They had to make a lot of moves, cut a lot of players, and make a lot of restructures to get under the cap and sign the players that they wanted. So it wasn't easy, but they pulled it off. Successfully did it. They got the players that they wanted. I'm highly, highly impressed, as I've been saying for the past few episodes. I think they did an excellent job there, but looking ahead at the cap space, I don't think they're going to have this problem next year. I don't think they're going to have to make all these cuts and restructures. I'm sure they will cut players, might restructure some contracts just to get even more money if they really want to be big spenders, or if they've got some big extensions to give out, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. But realistically, Giants are in a really good salary cap situation, and the future looks even brighter than you can possibly imagine because of how good our salary cap space is. So very happy to hear that. Shout out Kevin Abrams, shout out Dave Gettleman, doing a good job.
That's absolutely right. They did a really good job this offseason just getting ready for these contracts to expire when the cap is expected to explode in 2023. The new TV deals, guys, are massive, like billion-dollar deals per year. The team owners are making $300 million in revenue each. The cap is going to go from right now it went down, to 182, 185, somewhere around there. And it's going to blow up to about $210 million next year. This is a projection. I think it could go as high as $220, and then by 2023, I think it could go as high as $250 million. The cap is going to explode, guys. The Giants have so much money for the future. It's not even funny. For 2022, right now, they're projected to have $16 million. But you could always restructure deals. You can add an extra year. I think James Bradberry and Blake Martinez might be guys you could consider. Anthony, do you think that they might be able to take that and extend these two guys?
Yeah, I mentioned that in the last episode. I wish they would have extended James Bradberry and Blake Martinez. They didn't get it done this offseason. I think there's a good chance they get it done next offseason. Or, if they play out their full contract, they will get it done. I'm sure Blake Martinez and James Bradberry will be here for the long run. They absolutely deserve to be, especially after what they did in year one with the Giants, and I expect them to just get even better year to year, playing in Patrick Graham's defensive scheme, growing in their comfortability, and just continuing to be excellent players. Perfect scheme fits, the both of them are. I was very critical of Blake Martinez before he was playing for the Giants because I didn't like his skill set, right? I wasn't a fan of his skill set, but I also didn't fully understand what Patrick Graham's scheme was going to ask of Blake Martinez, and what it asked of him was to just play directly to that skill set, directly to his strengths, and he thrived because of it. So I think that was perfect. And then, of course, I think James Bradberry playing in this scheme as well was perfect. It was really just, perfect fine for great player, great scheme, perfect match, perfect marriage, right? Isn't that what they call it? So I think it was excellent, and, I think these are guys that we want around long term. So down the road, we need to make more cap space. I think they'll do that through extending those players.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I'll say this. Because they signed Adoree Jackson, he's 25 years old. And Bradberry is 27. So theoretically speaking, Bradberry obviously is going to get worse as he gets older towards the 30-year mark. I think he'll probably be better into this upcoming season. Maybe he'll be around a middling in his final season on the contract. But let's say we're going into 2023 when his contract is over. They extend him an extra year. He's about 29 years old. They could look to Adoree Jackson and say, "You're our CB1 now, James Bradberry. You're our CB2." And, they could do that, keep the pairing, and just maneuver those guys around to CB1, CB2, they could keep it the same, whatever it might be. The chemistry's there. I think they see those two guys as their long-term pair. Obviously, considering the contract they just gave Adoree Jackson, 3 years, $39 million, I want to talk about his cap for a second. They did a phenomenal job. His cap hit for this upcoming season is $5.875 million, so it's only 3.2% of the cap. Just a phenomenal job structuring this. But this deal, I gotta say, man, they really, really, really have faith in Adoree Jackson being a very good player. Because this deal, they're on the hook for a lot of guaranteed dead money in the coming years. It's pretty insane. Like, if they cut him pre-June 1st, 2022, he's 27 years old. If they cut him, they're on the hook for $10 million. Then 2023, they're on the hook for about $7 million. They're not going to get a lot of savings by cutting him. And even if they cut him post-June 1st, they still owe a ton in guarantees. They still owe $3.375 per season until 2024. This is guaranteed money for him. The Giants clearly have a lot of faith in his abilities. They clearly think he can be a lockdown cornerback alongside James Bradberry, which Anthony and I both agree that he can be that when he's healthy, for that matter. But I was telling Anthony before this, they took some big risks this year. Kenny Golladay only played 5 games last year. Adoree Jackson only played 2 full games last year, 3 games maybe. These guys did not play a lot last year, so they took a couple of risks, putting big money into players that did not really show that they were healthy in 2020. But it doesn't mean that they're going to be injured for the long term. It doesn't mean they're not going to come back. Obviously, they did their physicals, they checked them out, they hosted them on pretty lengthy visits, and they made sure that they were 100% ready to play in 2021. So I'm not worried about the injuries, but I will say it was interesting to see them take some ganders, some flyers on really big name players that were injured last year and give them massive contracts. But I think we're okay. I think they did their due diligence. We know that they're healthy, the physicals checked out clean. So I feel confident that we're good to go moving forward. But the cap space, for more or less, 2022, we have used up a majority of it. We only have about $16 million left. A couple days ago, we had about $60 million left. Maybe even more, maybe about $80 million. We've really backloaded a lot of that money because when we restructured James Bradberry's contract and Blake Martinez, it pushed about $7.5 million to next season. So that took even more money off next year's cap. But they're projecting is going to be about $210 million. I think it go as high as $220 personally, with this new TV deal in place, and I think they're thinking the same thing. And then in the final year of this deal, 2022, for most of these 3-year contracts, or rather 2023, the cap is going to skyrocket to $250 million. That's how I feel, at least. 2023 is going to skyrocket. These contracts are going to look puny. They signed 2019 deals for the most part in 2021, with the cap expected to go really high. So, Anthony, what are you thinking about the cap? Do you think that we're in a good spot moving forward?
I think we're in a great spot, and I want to quickly give my take on Adoree Jackson and his contract, right? Because that's something that I didn't get to speak about because you did the solo video, so now I want to give my take. I know some fans have been wanting to hear it. So, Adoree Jackson, how do I feel about that? Coming off of an injury, right? I love that contract. I don't care that they paid him $13 million a year. That, to me, is not an overpay. I mean, yeah, sure, by definition, they paid above market price. Not really, though, because the potential for Adoree Jackson is that he is a legitimate CB1 on a team, if he's on any other team. Of course, we have James Bradberry. He's our CB1, locked in, shutdown cornerback. He's number 1. But number 2, opposite of him, we were talking about trading for Stephon Gilmore a few weeks ago, how we thought that would be an excellent idea. Have dominant 2 CB1s at CB1 and CB2. We just got that in free agency with Adoree Jackson if he stays healthy. Adoree Jackson can legitimately bend. Right, no draft capital given up. Adoree Jackson can legitimately be a top cornerback in the NFL playing opposite of James Bradberry. And keep in mind, he's facing wide receiver 2s. He's facing the secondary target for these teams. He's going to lock them up if he stays healthy. So this was a signing based on potential, and I love that. I'm a big potential guy. I'm a guy who wants to shoot for the moon. You can either go for the high ceiling or the high floor. Alex sometimes tends to go for the high floor. I go for the high ceiling. That's when we get into our disagreements sometimes. If you remember back to the Deshaun Watson video, this was an argument that I kept making, how I want to go for the highest ceiling possible. I'll trade everything to get Deshaun Watson. But he's saying, nope, I want the higher floor. I want to keep my draft capital. I want to stay safe. Totally get that argument, but for me, when you're talking about signing a guy like Adoree Jackson in free agency, yeah, you're talking about paying him a lot of money and making a huge commitment, but you think he's not going to commit back? He is going to commit back, and if he's able to bounce back and play at the level we know he can, it's going to look like a steal. It's going to look like a bargain signing. And he's going to totally exceed expectations, in my opinion. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. And yeah, it's a signing based on potential. You are really shooting for the stars with this, shooting for the moon. And when you have a you have a quarterback on his rookie contract, and you want to be legitimate about becoming a playoff team and becoming a Super Bowl contending team, you're not making high floor signings. You're making high ceiling signings. You're going for the moon. You are shooting for the moon, shooting for the stars. You are trying to get all those guys that have the most boom potential possible. And that's what the Giants are doing with Adoree Jackson. Yeah, he's got a lot of bust potential on this contract, but he has a lot more boom potential to where you could say he transforms his defense overnight, being 2 CB1s on the field, becomes the best defense in the NFL. I already think this is a top 5 secondary in the league. I don't see many around the league that are better than this one. I think the addition of Adoree Jackson absolutely makes us a top 5 secondary, and I think that's going to be huge for us, especially when you're talking about how the defensive line and cornerbacks, or the secondary as well, play in part with each other, right? How you can get coverage sacks now. The Giants are going to get a lot of coverage sacks with the secondary, going to make the defensive line look a lot better. I think that's going to be huge. Really, just overall, this was a signing that was shooting for the moon, and I think that the Giants, same thing with Kenny Golladay, they are going for the moon. They are shooting for the stars. I love that, because that's what you have to do when you're trying to win a contract on a quarterback's rookie deal. And the Giants are now one step closer to being able to compete for a Super Bowl. They can do that now with Daniel Jones on his rookie contract. Of course, he's got his extension coming up, which I think we're going to get into in just a second. But right now, I'm looking at it this way. The Giants have realized that there is a window. I know Dave Gettleman said he doesn't believe in window theory. That was cap. That was cap. That was a lie. No way that he was telling the truth there, because he just totally proved that he believes in the window theory with these signings. Now within this window, they have the pieces in place to where maybe a couple nice, impactful draft picks, and they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders within the next year. And that's what excites me about this Adoree Jackson contract. Not so much the fact that Adoree Jackson is here, but what it signifies for what the Giants are trying to do within Daniel Jones' rookie contract.
Yeah, and just to get one thing straight, I am for the Adoree Jackson signing. I think that, like you mentioned, him going up against CB2s is phenomenal. And, let's talk about how this influences the scheme, Anthony, for a second, because the Giants really tried to cover up that CB2 position with Isaac Yiadom, Corey Ballantyne, Ryan Lewis. They were trying to cover up those deficiencies by playing more zone coverage, which is actually not Patrick Graham's strength. They managed to somehow put together a top 10 defense in points allowed per game off a whim. It was incredible. What we saw last year was a coaching masterpiece from Patrick Graham. But with James Bradberry and Adoree Jackson, they're going to ask them to be lockdown man cover corners. I think he's going to transition kind of back to his primary strength of man coverage defense. Now you have two CB1s essentially on your defense, and like you mentioned, coverage sacks are going to be easy to come by this year, which is why I don't think that they're going to spend a first-round pick on a pass rusher. I think it's going to be more or less a versatile player, best player available. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But Adoree Jackson is going to open up this defense completely, because you don't have to worry about one side of the field. They're going to ask James Bradberry and Adoree Jackson, lock down your side of the field. We'll provide you safety help with Logan Ryan. We're going to disguise coverages, use our trio of safeties, Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan, and Xavier McKinney. We're going to use a lot of disguises with them. You get them moving, get quarterbacks guessing where they're going to be, blitz them. We're going to do so many different things with these elite safeties, and we're going to ask our cornerbacks, lock down the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, Darnay Holmes in the slot, lock him down, and we're going to just get crazy creative with these safeties. That's what I expect from the Giants defense. It's going to be completely modernized. I'm super excited to see what they do, and it's going to open up the pass rush too, because our interior defense is still good. You get Xavier McKinney back, or rather Lorenzo Carter and Ocean Eximon is back, and maybe you draft somebody in the second round. You don't know yet. But this defense has top 5 capabilities, even top 2, maybe top capabilities. Patrick Graham and this coaching staff is incredible. I think that they did a phenomenal job last year. If people reference the 2019 Dolphins and how they were absolutely terrible, if you go and look up their roster, tell me any coach in the NFL. There was
nobody.
There was nobody. They were practice squad defense Literally. That Patrick Graham was using. The guy is what school did he go to again? Not Cornell, not Harvard.
Talking about Patrick Graham, he went to Stanford, didn't he?
No. I think he went to Yale. So okay. Patrick Graham's from Yale, man. He's an Ivy League intelligence. Well, they brought in a bunch
I'll
of
say
guys
this
like that.
Little anecdote that I have: when the Giants signed Patrick Graham, or hired Patrick Graham rather, because I live in South Florida, I have a friend who's a huge Miami Dolphins fan. I was like, okay, what do you think of him? Give me your thoughts. He's like, Well, we had absolutely nobody playing on that defense. It was terrible. It was a practice squad defense. But as the year went on, we could see these players developing, and we could see him starting to get the most out of them. So I think that this could potentially be a really good hiring for the Giants. I'm like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. I do my research. I start to see the same thing on film. Then I watch the Giants this year, see exactly that, man. As the year went on, players were just getting better and better. He got the most out of all of them. Amazing defensive scheme. I mean, you all know how much I love Patrick Graham and his defensive scheme, but yeah, even, you spoke about the 2019 Dolphins season. That was a tough year for them. The defense really struggled, but they did have some good performances. And overall, it was really more just showing how Patrick Graham gets the most out of young players as they progress. He was really developing them. And the development is huge, especially for the Giants, who are a very young team.
Exactly. Like, they were a very young team with a lot more talent to work with, and Patrick Graham utilized that and maximized it. But they also have a bunch of phenomenal coaches, including Jerome Henderson, Spencer Chaos. They have some really, really good coaches behind Patrick Graham, which makes all of this possible. And, with their cap space and the health they do have moving forward, the Giants committing to Adoree Jackson now, if he does end up being what they hope he is, they took a calculated risk on this one. They're going to be paying Adoree Jackson a CB1 $13 million per year when they're paying James Bradbury $14.5 million, which is a steal, And now you have arguably the best cornerback duo in football, on good contracts with room to spare. This is very, very good opportunity for them, especially with a rookie contract and their quarterback, to finally go all in and really commit. And I think they did it this offseason. They did a phenomenal job. And they picked the right time to do it, by the way, because there was so many players that had no choice but to be cut. There was going to be more players on the market and less competition. So the contracts weren't going to be as crazy. There was going to be more talent available for them to choose from. And they really maximized and really took advantage of it. And I think that's why this offseason they really killed it, because they saw the avenue they could take. And then, that's kind of how they went about it. But let's dive into our mock draft for a second. I do want to talk about this, and just before we do that, actually, a new signing for the Giants. Zach Fulton of the Houston Texans, they just brought him on. He's kind of a versatile guy, can play guard and center. Not a bad player. He's about average to slightly below average. He's, allowed up 11 sacks last year, which probably scares you, but Houston was a complete disaster in 2020. So, I get, he was in the last year of his contract, just really didn't put him in a good spot. I'd say he's a camp body. We'll see if he even makes the roster, but somebody they bring in to compete, maybe earn a reserve spot. He's not going to be a starting player. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Zach Fulton, but he's pretty much.
Yeah, I absolutely think he does make the roster, actually. I don't think he's just a camp body. This is a guy who started or, played 3 years with, has 90 starts since entering the league in 2014, veteran experience. Like, he's a solid player. He's not, great, but the Giants on the interior, he has experience playing left guard, right guard, and center. The Giants' interior of their offensive line needs some depth, and this is a perfect depth piece. This is a guy that you just place, say Shane Lemieux is just playing terrible one game. Okay, Zach Fulton, go out there, fix that. We know we can get average play out of you. Remember we were talking about that the other day, where kind of like the one spot where I am a high floor guy is on the offensive line, because I think it's really hard to get average offensive linemen. So if you're going to go for the high floor, I think Zach Fulton's floor is pretty high. You're not getting elite offensive line play, but you're not getting an atrocious offensive lineman that can't block anybody, right? You're getting a guy that is going to consistently be about average, and I think that's fine. So I think this is a solid signing, nice depth signing. This is probably a guy who doesn't start week one, but he definitely gets some playing time if there's any injuries or if there's anybody who's really struggling out there, like when Will Hernandez was really struggling and they pulled him from the lineup. If Zach Fulton was on the roster, he probably goes out there and secures a starting job for the rest of the season, because he's giving you average play for the rest of the year. So I like the signing. I think it's solid. It's nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, but solid signing, nice little depth piece there that the Giants brought in, and looking forward to seeing if he actually does get some playing time in 2021.
Yeah, he's dirt cheap too, so I'm not too worried about this. This is just a good depth piece they can bring in, let him compete. Like Anthony said, he'll probably end up making the roster as a depth guy. I personally don't think he's going to be a starter unless there's an injury or someone really sucks, like Shane Lemieux is really sucking. They can be like, all right, Zach, go in there and just do whatever you can. But I think he's a guy that will at least bring some competition, push for a starting spot, maybe make Shane Lemieux better if they're gonna create a position battle at right guard. But let's jump into our mock draft, Anthony. I'm excited to talk about this real quick. I'll let you go first because I know you have very confused mindset about the draft now that, the Giants have plugged a bunch of holes. And we previously thought maybe they would go with a wide receiver. Maybe they'd go with a guy like Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain, who just kicked ass in his pro day. Who knows what they're going to do now? But let's give our take. Let's give, I'll let you go first and give your player of choice.
Man, listen, round one. Let's do one round mock draft. I said this to Alex before we started recording. I said, if you had to guess, if you had to make a bet, like your life is on the line, you have to bet. Who are the Giants picking at number 11? Do you have any idea right now? Not really.
A kicker.
I have no clue. Yeah, for all we know, it could be a kicker. It could be, a punter. It could be a long snapper. It could be anybody. It could be a running back, right? I have no idea who the Giants are picking right now, and I love that. I'm so happy about that. This time last year, if you would have asked me, who are the Giants picking? I'm saying, well, they're either going offensive tackle or linebacker, and I know that for a fact. They're either going Isaiah Simmons or an offensive tackle, and if they don't like Isaiah Simmons, 1,000% they're going offensive tackle. It's just about figuring out which one they want, right? So that's not the case this year. This year we're saying, okay, we're hearing reports that they're in love with Devontae Smith and they want to pair him with Kenny Golladay. Very possible. We're hearing that Micah Parsons is shooting up draft boards once again because people are starting to forget about his, off the field incidents, and they're starting to look at his 40-yard dash and say, man, this kid's an athlete. Okay, could be him. People are looking at Rashawn Slater saying, man, if he falls to 11, might be a home run pick. People are looking at Jalen Waddle saying, man, might be a home run pick. There's a lot of options, and there's still people that are mocking all those edge rushers and cornerbacks to the Giants as well. Even though we just signed Adoree Jackson, I'm still seeing Patrick Surtain go to the Giants at 11 in some mock drafts, and I'm still seeing Gregory Rousseau somehow going at 11, but another mock draft's going at like 30. There's a lot going on for the Giants right now, and I don't know what's real, what's not, and I love it. I love that I have no clue what the Giants are going to do with the 11th pick in the draft. Had they not signed Kenny Golladay, it would have been easy. I would have told you they're going to go with a playmaker. They're going to go with a wide receiver at number 11. Not the case anymore. The Giants have set themselves up in a way where they can truly go best player available with the 11th overall pick. They can choose whatever guy falls down the board and lands in their lap. They take him. They don't have to draft for need. You never really should draft for need in the first place, but they absolutely don't have to. They're set up in a perfect position, and I have no clue what they're going to do. I feel like nobody does, and I think that is beautiful. That is exactly how it should be. They're really, they got their poker faces on. We really don't know what the Giants are doing. That's very exciting for me. But I'm going to make my prediction. If I had to make my prediction, here's what I think. If Rashawn Slater is on the board at 11, I think the Giants take him. And now I'm not saying they're taking him to start at right tackle. I'm saying they're taking him to start wherever he plays best, wherever they feel he can do the most while also getting the most out of other players. So if Matt Parrott looks really good in camp, Rashawn Slater's starting day one at offensive guard, and that's going to be perfect. That is going to be like ginormous for the Giants to have Rashawn Slater starting on the inside instantly. Like, you're talking about potential all-pro guy, Pro Bowl guy from day one. So if I had to make the pick right now, I had to make the bet. If Rashawn Slater's on the board at 11, it's him. But I know there's a lot of other options out there, and like I said, I can't really figure out what the Giants are doing right now. Maybe once we get closer to the draft, I'll be able to differentiate the different prospects. But right now, my bet, I'm just going to say Rashawn Slater. I've been watching Rashawn Slater film this week. I really like him. He's really nimble. He's got really quick feet, and he's fun to watch, and I think that he could do a lot in the Giants' offense.
Rashawn Slater would be a freaking stud, man. The guy is projected as potentially the next Marcus Pouncey center if he goes to the interior that way, or an above average, potentially elite guard, or a potentially elite offensive tackle. I love it.
I gotta say, I have seen people project him as center. I think the Draft Network was the one who did it. I know his arms are really short, and it does show up on the film sometimes when he's playing left tackle at Northwestern. I've noticed that.
He'd be a perfect guard. Give me him as a right guard. Oh, he would be the next Zach Martin at guard.
That's what I'm saying. I want him at guard. I think center is a little bit too extreme. People want to move him all the way over to center. I think that's a little bit too much because then you're not really getting him pulling like that. I watched it was against Michigan State. I watched a play where he was playing offensive tackle, but they're running some kind of trap blocking scheme, and he comes around the back of the offensive guard, gets right through the hole of the center, just buries this linebacker, and I was like, whoa. Now that was some speed that if you put that guy at offensive guard and you're running 0-1 trapper, you're running power zero to the right side, Saquon Barkley is going to feast with a guy like Rashawn Slater out ahead of him. So That's my thing with that. I don't want him at center because then you're not really getting him pulling. You're kind of getting him. Yeah, it seems like it's out of position, out of his skill set, right? If you want to play to the player's strengths, I think his strengths really do fit really well at offensive guard, and I think that's where he ultimately will end up in the league just because of that. I think someone's going to give him a chance to play a tackle, but I think eventually he moves into guard, and if the Giants draft him at 11, I think he starts at guard day one and is a phenomenal player for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends what team drafts him at the end of the day. He could easily, I mean, people say it every year, Anthony. We've talked about this before. Every year, they're like, Tristan Wirfs, go into guard. Andrew Thomas, he should go into guard. This guy's going to guard. Rashawn Slater, they're saying he'd go into guard because he could be an elite talent there, but I'm not worried about him at right or left tackle if he was to stay at those positions. Look at Nate Solder. The guy's like the inflatable flailing tube man in terms of length, and he stinks. Long arms is not the end all be all of a good tackle in the NFL. Rashawn Slater has the speed, like you said, the nimble feet. He's agile as hell, super flexible, super versatile. He can fit into any scheme you need him to, and he's extremely smart. If you see pictures of him with the glasses, he kind of looks like he just crushed the spelling bee and then went and crushed it on the football field. And he's strong, man. If you saw that video recently of him lifting weights, the guy is strong as hell. He's a not missed prospect. If he's on the board for the Giants, I'm totally fine with him. But for my one-round mock draft, I'm going with Micah Parsons. And simply because if everything comes back clean with his off-the-field issues, the Giants are going to do their due diligence. I 100% believe it. They have connections. They have connections with Micah Parsons. Coach Chaos, the Giants defensive line coach, has a very close bond with Micah Parsons, okay? They have been in contact numerous times throughout the combine process or the pro day process now, and he stays in contact with Spence. This is a guy who knows Micah Parsons. If he feels good about him and he tells the Giants coaching staff and he tells the guys in the front office making this decision, making this draft pick, Micah Parsons our guy, he will be a good player for us and he will not cause any crap behind the scenes, they will draft Micah Parsons because he's a guy, he's like Devin White. He's like Devin White, but he can rush the passer as an outside linebacker. That's how I feel about him. The way he breaks tackles, the way he sheds tackles, the way he rushes the passer, the way he sheds tackles at the second level against, pulling guards and whatnot, he does it with pass rush moves. He's so advanced. He just ran a 4.35 on his 40-yard dash, which, I don't hold too much credit for because Penn State always manages to boost their 40-yard dash. The guy he's a massive guy. He's fast as hell. This is a player who you build. He's a cornerstone on defense that you're adding to a defense that already is projected to be elite. You're adding an elite player to an already projected elite defense. That is what you want to go. The Giants obviously want to build through their defense. They obviously want to do that. And wide receiver, you don't need to take a wide receiver in the first round. We see it every single year. The second round, you could get an offensive guard. You get Wyatt Davis, Creed Humphrey. You can get Alex Leatherwood if you want to push him inside. Or you could get a guy like Rondale Moore. Or, a guy like Terrace Marshall if he falls. Or, Elijah Moore. There's a ton of players you can get in the second round. That you're going to get extreme value and production from. They might not be wide receiver ones, but you don't necessarily need to go with that. You could always go with Evan Ingram, Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, Dante Pettis, Darius Slayton, and you have John Ross. Those playmakers are enough on offense to have an above-average offense. You could go with an offensive guard. Micah Parsons is going to make your defense elite, even more so. We're talking potentially best defense in the NFL. If he refines his coverage abilities, the guy is a freak athlete. He can rush the passer as a stacked outside linebacker. He can do so many things for your defense, man. He's incredible.
I think I have a somewhat hot take on Micah Parsons here, right? Because I really like Micah Parsons' game. I think the Giants have a clear-cut need on defense, and it's not at inside linebacker necessarily. You know what? They can definitely improve their second inside linebacker next to Blake Martinez. Their clear-cut need on defense is off the edge. Now, Micah Parsons is interesting because you just mentioned it. His pass rush moves are kind of insane. He's kind of an edge rusher playing inside linebacker. The Giants potentially could draft him at 11 and move him to edge rusher. This is not unheard of. We've seen edge rushers move to inside linebacker. We've seen Anthony Barr do
versatility,
that.
Dude. Versatility. It's the versatility that Patrick Graham and Joe Judge loves. He can do so many different things. He's not a one-trick pony.
We know that this coaching staff loves versatility, and we know that this coaching staff loves having connections to players, right? And the Giants do have that connection. Like you just mentioned, Coach Chaos has that connection to Micah Parsons. They have a really good relationship. So, I could totally see this being the pick, and I would probably love it if it were the pick. I know there's a lot to say about the off-the-field incidents. I feel like I've gone over this a few times. I think that it was more of a Penn State problem than it was a Micah Parsons problem. I think he was trying to fit into a culture. The coaching staff really fostered a disgusting culture in that locker room and allowed it to happen. I think that's more on the coaching staff. I think he was just being the leader of that locker room, but that locker room just had a lot of problems, and he was leading it the wrong way, right? So that's not going to happen in the NFL.
They're kids.
Right, they're kids. They're very impressionable. They were being impressioned by their coaches. Their coaches were basically telling them, go do this. This is acceptable. And it was not. It's never acceptable. But it's never going to be acceptable in the NFL. It will never be a problem for Micah Parsons in the NFL. He will never be have that problem because that just would not exist in an NFL.
Jabril Peppers will kick his ass.
Literally.
Leonard
Jabril
Williams
Peppers
will kick
put
his
him
ass.
to bed. Yes,
Logan Ryan will kick his ass.
Yes, these guys will put him to bed. It wouldn't be a problem in the Giants locker room. I don't see it that way. I just think when
Forget
you're
those
looking
guys.
at the prospect,
Joe Judge
looking
would
at him
kick
on
his
the field,
ass.
Joe Judge will kick his ass. Yeah,
Kick
yeah,
his
that's
ass.
right. Joe Judge will kick his ass same way he kicked Mark Colombo's ass, right? Yeah. But yeah, listen. With Micah Parsons, I think the Giants, if they were to draft him, you're going to see him play a lot of edge rusher. You're going to see him rush off the edge a lot, and I think that would be really good for him. I think he'd really thrive in that role. And then I think, when you're talking about the versatility, you're talking about how we saw Carter Coughlin. I think he's playing the Carter Coughlin role on steroids. You're going to see him play a lot of QB spy. You're going to see him rush off the edge a ton, and then you're going to see him drop back into coverage and play this off-ball linebacker way more than an edge rusher should. That's the role that Micah Parsons ends up playing, but he ends up playing it at a near all-pro level in his first season. Bam. I would love to see Micah Parsons in a Giants uniform, bro.
I think the same thing. I think because it's not even only that, but you could put him next to Blake Martinez and rush him from a middle linebacker standpoint. You could put him on the defensive line in over the freaking center if you wanted to, and drop him back into zone coverage. You could put him in the 5 tech. You could put him an outside linebacker, and he could drop into zone coverage. But he could also rush the passer at a high level. 1v1 versus a tackle. He is so athletically gifted and so quick and so strong. He will beat a majority of tackles 1v1. That's how good this player is. He is going to be an absolute stud for a team that uses him the right way. And I honestly think the Giants, if he's at 11, would take him over Rashawn Slater. I really do think that, because I think that he has the ability to be an immediate, like you mentioned, all-pro level player. And Rashawn Slater, while I do think he is going to be unbelievably talented, I think that they will go with the best player available, and because I don't think Rashawn Slater played last year, did Micah Parsons play last year too? I'm actually not entirely sure.
Micah Parsons opted out in 2020.
He opted out, so I think Rashawn Slater did too.
I think if he didn't opt out, I think this is actually hindsight's always 2020 for these players. I think players like Penei Sewell doesn't matter. He's going to go top 5 anyway.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of these players, Micah Parsons in particular, he opted out because he was already top 10 pick, right? Gregory Rousseau opted out because people looked at him as a top 10 pick. Now Gregory Rousseau is projected to go at the back end of the first round, and same thing with Micah Parsons. A lot of people see him falling outside of the top 10. These are two players that, hindsight is 2020, probably should have played this year if they could. I don't know actually the full details as to why. Maybe they did it for personal family problems, maybe someone illnesses, just definitely good reasons to opt out. But if these players just opted out to protect themselves from injury because they thought their draft stock was good, these are probably players who could have benefited from playing in 2020 in retrospect. I think that Micah Parsons would have made himself a top 5 lock if he went out there and just dominated this year, and he just, cleared his name on all of these, interesting allegations that he had. I think he could have made himself a top 5 lock. But either way, with Micah Parsons, you're talking about a guy who probably is a top 5 talent and is now not going to be a top 5 pick. So when you're talking about top 5 talent falling to 11, you're talking about slam dunk like you're Michael Jordan in the dunk contest for the Giants.
I like that analogy. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this little 1-round mock draft, obviously going through the cap health for the coming years. Really interesting stuff here. The Giants are setting themselves up for an absolute home run of a draft if they make the right selections. Honestly, I can't see how they can mess this up. There's so many great players available. It would take a surprise pick to really piss me off at this point. In the second round, so much talent, especially at wide receiver too, and offensive guard. So I'm really excited to see what the Giants do in the coming weeks, guys. But I hope you enjoyed this video, Fireside Giants, breaking down a couple different things here. And make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, turn on your notifications on Twitter, Spotify, and Apple. Much love for the support lately. We will catch you guys on the next video.